Hello and welcome back to Indie Book Talk. Today we have Anisa Asabi. I did it. I did it.
You
I did
got
it.
it. Yeah. Beautiful.
Uh,
She's a
and
pro.
yeah, I'm a pro. I'm good at this. But that's not. It's not about me. It's about Anisa. We're talking about her book, Finding Chaz with a Z. Get that right. And Anisa grew up as a Middle Eastern girl in an all-white community, which sounds super fun. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the book, and we're going to talk about her dog, who is a German Shepherd named Anubis, which I'm just really excited about. Anisa, welcome to the show.
Thank you
Welcome.
so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Okay, burning first question. Um, no, I'm not going to ask about the dog first. I want
That's
Hey,
my
you
job.
can.
it's Shelly's job. No, my first question is, uh, so you kind of pitched this to us as talking about identity,
Mhm.
and yet your book is talking about identity, but maybe not in a super direct way. So, why identity? Tell us this story of growing up a Middle Eastern girl in an all white community and how that shaped how you write.
Yeah, I mean, the topic of identity is kind of interesting for me because it's really fluctuated as I've gotten older. When I think about like my relationship with it when I was younger, I was very much, I'm American, like full stop, you know, not really wanting to delve into my heritage or like how I felt different from my peers. But as I've gotten older, I've, learned to embrace it and kind of be proud of my heritage and then want to impart like what I've learned as a young adult onto teenage girls and boys who might be feeling the way I did when I was their age. And that's kind of where my writing comes in and how I decided to write a narrator who has the same heritage as I do.
Awesome.
But I
So,
got the impression from the blurb about the interview was you didn't make it very overt. You just made it as like
Mhm.
part of the story. So could you share a little bit about how you weave that in?
For sure. When I thought about it, I was like, all the books that I've read that have a non-white main character, that's like such a huge part of the plot. But in my case, it's like I didn't want it to be a huge part of the plot. I just wanted it to be, something that was so natural. You know what I mean? It's like there are characters and people who are experiencing everyday struggles that may or may not be related to their identity. And so that they should be able to have a story, a coming of age story, just like everybody else. And so that's kind of where that came in.
I definitely feel like we're seeing a trend toward that idea of a person can be insert category here without that being everything about them.
Hmm.
Exactly.
I really like that.
Thank you. Yeah.
As you explored that question, did you come up against anything where you had to, rethink your own approach, or anything where you're like, "Ooh, that bothered me more than I thought it would," writing about it or thinking back on it?
Yeah, I mean, in the original draft of Finding Chaz that I started when I was 13 or 14,
Oh
the
my gosh.
narrator, it took a while to get here. But the main character, she wasn't Iranian, she wasn't Middle Eastern. It was kind of ambiguous when I wrote it. And that's kind of what my headspace was like at the time. And then when I came back to it as a 21 year old during the pandemic, I was like, I want to change that. I want to make it more reflective of the experiences that I had. So we see Roxy's journey. She is experiencing the everyday struggles of a 15-year-old girl growing up in the 2000s. But then we hear kind of like some of her inner monologue is how she feels different from the girls that she goes to school with. There's like one particular scene where she's like, girls who wear cowboy boots and are homecoming queen and don't have to use an entire pot of wax like on their eyebrows every week. And every time I read that, I smile because I just remember exactly what that feels like, you know. So.
No, that's great. So tell us a little bit about the book. Is it it's young adult,
Mhm.
um, fiction, any kind of genre particularly?
Yeah, it's a contemporary coming of age story. It is targeted to young adults, but some of the most positive feedback I've received has been like from people in their 30s and 40s, surprisingly. So it really is a story for everybody. it's, you know, a coming of age story, diverse cast of characters, like in every sense of the word, growing up in like rural America in the 2000s. So we kind of get a lot of stories like interweaving in one, which I think is really fun.
Yeah, I'm no longer surprised by how many adults being young adult. I mean, I do as well, and
Yeah.
it's a big thing. I mean, it's just a type. I mean, there's still great books in young adults.
I totally agree. It's such a fun age. And, you know, I don't know, some of my favorite books of all time are like in that young adult category. So I wanted to kind of create something that everybody could relate to, like the high school experience.
What, when you look around at other books that maybe have Middle Eastern protagonists, or more likely, because let's be honest, a secondary character that somebody threw in there for diversity's sake, what bugs you? What do you want to be like, no, 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 no?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, there's so many like tropes about, you know, like every race or ethnic group.
Mhm.
And I would say like the overbearing parents, like the super strict overbearing parents, or like, you know, the religious component, you know, like they're Muslim. But for Roxy, she's, you know, that's not exactly her experience. For one thing, the Middle Eastern parent that she has is her dad, and he's passed away in the story. So we're kind of watching her navigate her identity without having that parent present, which I think is a really unique take on it.
Mhm.
You know, she's not religious, but she does have like a strong moral compass, and she's really just figuring her stuff out. It's, you know, she's kind of pushed to one side at school. She's coping with the grief of losing her dad. She's not doing well in school. So there's kind of like a landslide of things like on her plate when we first meet her. So her identity just kind of is one of those things. And it's interesting to see like how her brother Nick, who is 18, so he's 3 years older than her, sees
Mhm.
their identity versus how she does. And that's an
Okay.
interesting thing to see as well, their
So you get
dynamic.
it from both genders going
Mhm.
through it. Great.
So we talked about Roxy. You just mentioned Nick. Who the heck is Chaz?
Okay, good question. So Chaz starts out as the antagonist of the story. He's basically that creepy kid that harasses girls, gets away with it. Nobody likes him. You know, he's just a disaster.
Why does
But
he get to be in the title?
because Chaz has a whole redemption arc, and that's why I love this story so much, is because we see second chances. We see, you know, the opportunity for growth. Even like the most disgusting creatures might not be the way that we perceive them. And that's definitely the case for Chaz. And we kind of see how Roxy is able to push, you know, her hatred aside and forgive, and really kind of have that, yeah, like just goodness of her heart, forgiveness, growing up. All of those factors come into play, and we realize that Chaz is struggling with things that we can't imagine that he would have been struggling with when we first meet him.
Okay. So is there more in Roxy's future, or are you working on a different concept?
Right now, I actually have an outline for the second book of Finding Chaz. It's not titled yet, and so I
Well,
have
we found Chaz, so
Chaz has been found.
Now we have to find somebody else. It's like Finding Nemo, Finding Dory, right?
Yeah, I mean, we get to delve a lot deeper into these characters in the second installment, and I'm really excited for that because there's a lot of story left to be told. I feel like.
excellent.
So you're writing the story with this redemption arc. Do you see a parallel to that, like being judged, being misunderstood, and then somebody, coming to accept you or finding a way forward? Do you see a parallel to that and to the experience of being a Middle Eastern person in the United States? Because I feel like there's a lot of marginalization, a lot of jumping to conclusions that
Hmm.
some
Mhm.
do. Are you writing from experience there, or was this just that experience of being a young person and finding yourself and that sort of second chance?
I would say a little bit of both. When I describe these characters, I think we talked about this a little bit earlier, but I like to think of each of them as an onion, with so many layers. And at the beginning, we see these kids, these characters, and some of them might appear to be just like a stereotypical thing. And then as the layers start coming off, we realize there's so much more to each of their personalities and their who they are, than we would have seen at a first glance. And that's definitely the case for Roxy, but it's also the case for Chaz. It's the case for her best friend Hannah, and for Cece, who they befriend along the way. And, she ends up teaching them a lot about life. So it's kind of like this symbiotic relationship between each of the characters. And, they are a diverse cast of characters, but that's not just why they bring something to the table. It's really just all of them coming together and feeding off of each other in a positive way. And I think that is the only way that we will be able to overcome stereotypes and, any sort of racism, is by learning from each other. And that's what we see in Finding Chaz.
Was there some reason you decided to take it back up after all these years?
I had encouragement from family. I had time during the pandemic, and it was like a story that never really left my mind. I wrote it when I was young, so aspects of it were kind of juvenile, but the bones of it were really good. And I thought, how perfect to kind of marry lived experience with like authentic, raw feeling that I wrote when I was the age of the characters. And it took a lot of work, but I think the end result is something really unique, where you kind of see that fusion of like the lived experience and the authenticity.
So when we start talking about lived experience, the question becomes, how much of it is real things that happened or real people in your life, and how much of it, I mean, we're already getting the sense that Roxy and you have some overlap as kids.
Oh, for sure.
So what else in there that have you ripped from the headlines in real life?
And then you just give it a new name too.
Well, I mean, I think any writer is going to pull from people that they know. Like, I think you have to be somewhat of an observer to create worlds and to create characters. A lot of it is, purely fictional, loosely based. The relationship between the main character, Roxy, and her brother, Nick, is most of it, at least like their conversations and dynamic, is directly a mirror of my brother and I. We're extremely close. Yeah. He's like my biggest supporter. He was the one who really like lit the fire under me to pick this book back up as well.
I was going to say, how does he feel about how he's portrayed in the book?
He's a good sport. Like he loves it. But the other characters are, more imagined. They're more like me sitting back being like, this person's interesting. I want to pull this aspect of their personality and throw them in a story. So that's a bit more loosely based, but definitely like Roxy's inner monologue, a lot of it is, I'm going to be honest, she's a bit of a self-insert character. And and yeah, like I said, the dynamic between her and her brother, I don't think that would be very difficult to write from like pure imagination. It's heavily influenced by my personal relationship with him.
So what do you think is going to happen in the next book? Is it like off to college perhaps, or?
No spoilers.
No spoilers. Okay, I'll keep it simple. It picks up pretty much immediately where the book leaves off, because let's be honest, I wanted to write like 1,000 pages of the book. I had to cut it where I did, like, so people wouldn't get annoyed with me. But yeah, it picks up pretty much exactly where they left off. We're going to have some new characters coming in. We're going to have more of an exploration of Roxy and her, feelings about herself, and more of that identity coming into play. It's going to take a bit more of a center stage than it did in Finding Chaz. We're going to explore her relationship with the boy that she likes, and she's going to realize maybe there's some things about him that she's not so enamored by. And, we're going to have to see him work a little bit to prove why he's worthy of her. And we're going to see how her brother deals with her kind of foray into dating. And then there's Chaz. So Chaz is going to kind of explore his identity a bit more. Chaz, I mean, I don't want to spoil too much,
Nope,
but
no spoiling.
okay, no spoilers, no spoilers.
As long as we're not dating Chaz, it's fine.
No, Chaz is not, definitely not.
So, you spent many years thinking about the story, putting the story together, and then you decided to independently publish. So
I
why did you
did.
make that decision?
There were a couple of reasons. The first one, I reached out to, I luckily live in a place where there's a big creative community. So I had resources. I reached out to somebody who is a published author, traditionally published, and I was asking her about, querying and what to know, what to avoid, all of that kind of stuff. And right off the bat, she was like, your book is way too long for the genre. Like it's 155,000 words or something like that.
Ouch. Okay.
Yeah, it's long.
Have you kept it that long?
I did. I did.
Okay.
And anybody who has read the book has said, that was the right decision because there's no other way to tell the story, and in my opinion. But she was like, it'll have to be cut down to around 100,000 words, and I was like, well, that's impossible. So I thanked her for her time, and I started thinking. I was like, is querying something that I even want to do now that I know this? And I also thought about like my own relationship with my writing, and I'm thinking, okay, do I want to lose creative control over things like the cover, what stays in, what goes out? And I started researching more about self-publishing because initially I didn't want to do it. But as I learned more, I was like, why isn't everybody doing this? So I kind of had like a full 180 on my viewpoint on self-publishing and indie books and all of that. So now I'm like a huge fan. I'm so glad that I did it that way because you're kind of in control of your own destiny as an author, and you can kind of just focus on, what goes in the book instead of like everything else.
So what path did you take? Did you do a lot of outsourcing of things like book cover and editing? What did you do for your choices on those things?
Yeah, I hired a team of people who specialize in like helping you do all of that. So they like put together a package for me, but it was not like a hybrid situation. It was just, like having an editor, having somebody help me with the cover. I had a friend do the art on it. So I had, a direct pipeline to her. She did a beautiful job. She like completely encapsulated Chaz's personality and energy. I love it.
He's kind of creepy.
Oh, he's definitely creepy.
I'm looking at her right now, and I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, he's creepy, but we learn why. Like, don't count him out, even though you're gonna hate him at the beginning. Like, don't count him out right away.
Judge Chaz.
Even though
Chaz
everybody would judge him. So, but yeah, I had like total control over it, and that was one of my favorite aspects for sure. Because I'm a control freak.
No, it's great to be able to do all that.
Definitely.
I just wondered, so you didn't do any of like the formatting and stuff, the team that you hired did all that for you?
I did a lot of the editing and formatting like by myself before I even turned it over to them. Just so that I could kind of, it was like in tip-top shape, at least as tip-top as I could get it before I handed it over to them. And then they did like the final touches and like the fine-tooth comb editing and all of that. So I hope after I've bragged like that there's no typos in it.
All books have typos. Anyone who tells you that they don't is a liar. Because I have read lost count of the number of traditionally published books that I've read, which, have large well-known themes that have typos. So like a couple slipping through, it's just how it is. We can't hold ourselves to a higher standard than they do. Okay, so we are sort of coming up toward the end of our time, and so I want to ask you, or Shelley, do you want to ask?
What? This is your thing.
You want to ask about the dog?
Oh, the dog.
Are we showing dog pictures? I'm in.
So, do you have a picture of Anubis, your adorable German Shepherd?
Oh, I have pictures. I have like albums. Okay. Yeah.
I feel like we're already being denied an actual live dog on the
I'm
screen.
sorry, he's not here. He's
She was
out
a
at the
good
park.
podcast guest and made sure that she had a quiet space by not having the dog. And we're
I'm
giving
trying to
her
find. He has an Instagram. Can I plug his Instagram?
yes. What is his
Yes.
Instagram?
Okay, his Instagram is Anubis. His name, so ANUBIS .GSheppo GSHEPPO.PNW. That's his Instagram. He has over 2,000 followers, and he follows back. So
Of course he does.
he's very polite. So
Okay.
here's him
So those of you who
sleeping.
are watching right now may be able
Look
to
at that
see a picture of
baby.
Anubis. If you're not watching on the YouTubes, go check that out because there are actual photos being shown right now as we speak. If you can't go watch the YouTube because you're driving or whatever, then just remember you can go follow him on the Instagrams because we are going to as soon as this is over, and we will put his handle in the show notes so that everyone can go follow Anubis. While you're at it, maybe go by finding Chaz. This dog is too cute. I can't handle it. His ears are killing
Now
me.
wait a minute. Is there a German Shepherd in the book?
No, there's not.
Oh,
I
that's
know. Because when I started writing the book, I didn't have him.
she's
So
gonna need a
Maybe
good
in book
dog.
2.
book 2, Roxy adopts a German Shepherd, and his name is Anubis.
There you go. Perfect.
Maybe.
We're changing the plot on the fly.
So after we all follow Anubis, where on the internet can people find you?
So I'm on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Why did I think I forgot? Yeah, those are the 3 that I have. So Facebook and TikTok, author Anisa. And on Instagram, it's my first name, Anisa _ last name Ashabi on Instagram. So
All right. We will also put those links in the comments so you can easily find all of her amazing things. But yeah, go follow Anubis. Also go follow Anisa. And thank you for being here and talking to us about your book. I'm kind of intrigued now.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm probably gonna go read it. It's what I do. I interview
It
people and I
is.
read their books. It's what I do.
Well, be
Thank
sure
you
to
so
let
much.
me know and keep pushing through. Don't shut down because Chaz is such a creep. That's my word of advice.
Okay,
We will
let's
have
just
faith
enjoy
in
hating
Chaz.
him. Well, thank you so much, Anisa. We appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, thank you so
Yes,
much for
thank
having
you.
me. It was a blast.